The wind howled through the towering redwoods, their massive trunks stretching skyward like ancient monoliths ready to topple at any moment. The eerie sound echoed through the depths of Redwood National Park. Under the blood-red hues of the setting sun, Ethan Carter stood still, his hollow eyes lost in the void. Rumors swirled about this place, whispers of vanished travelers, ghostly murmurs drifting through the trees, and shadowy figures lurking in the mist. Ethan didn't believe in superstitions. He hadn't come here to chase ghosts. He had come to escape, to run from his mother's death, from the memories that clawed at his mind like rusted blades. But today fate had set a trap he never saw coming. His footsteps were heavy on the damp, decaying leaves, the scent of earth mingling with the salty tang of the nearby Pacific. His fingers clenched around the straps of his backpack, which held only a few stale pieces of bread and a sketchbook, the last things tethering him to sanity amidst the chaos within. Then a low growl shattered the forest's eerie silence. Ethan froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He turned, scanning the murky twilight between the ancient trunks. Not a bear. Not a wolf. A German shepherd. Its fur was matted with dirt, its ribs jutting out beneath its ragged coat. But what struck Ethan most were its eyes, two burning embers glowing in the encroaching night. The dog stood rigid before a fallen tree, lips curled back in a warning snarl, yet it did not lunge. Ethan held his breath, slowly lowering himself, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Easy there. I'm not here to hurt you," he murmured, voice unsteady. Then he saw them. 4 tiny puppies, barely alive, their frail bodies caked in mud, huddled together beneath the fallen trunk. Ethan's chest tightened. The mother, so gaunt her bones threatened to pierce through her skin, had clearly gone days without food. But it wasn't just the tragic sight that sent a shiver racing down his spine. It was what lay beside them. Half buried in thick moss, a colossal stone hand jutted from the earth, twice the size of any human's. Its long, slender fingers stretched toward the sky, frozen in a silent plea. Ethan's breath hitched. What the hell is this? This was no discarded sculpture, no cheap garden ornament. The craftsmanship was unervingly lifelike, intricate ridges on the knuckles, delicate grooves of fingernails, swirling symbols carved into the joints like an ancient language lost to time. Against his better judgment, Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the mother dog's wary growl. He reached out and brushed his fingers against the stone. It was ice cold. But the moment he made contact, a warmth pulsed through his fingertips, as if something beneath the surface still lived, still breathed. He yanked his hand back, pulse hammering. The dog, whose worn collar later revealed her name to be Freya, had stopped growling. Instead, she stared at him, her fiery eyes no longer hostile but pleading. The puppies whimpered weakly, their tiny bodies shivering. Ethan exhaled, the weight of the moment settling over him. Reaching into his backpack, he unscrewed his water bottle and poured some into the cap, offering it to Freya. She hesitated, then drank in desperate gulps, her eyes flickering with something that almost resembled gratitude. The forest around them grew darker, the shadows thickening, and yet that stone hand remained, silent, watching, waiting. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Something was here. Something ancient. Something that wanted to be found. He clenched his jaw. "All right, Freya," he muttered, determination hardening his voice. "We're getting out of here. I'll take you and the pups somewhere safe." But even as he scooped up 2 of the puppies, tucking them carefully into the folds of his jacket, and Freya gently carried the other 2 in her jaws, Ethan knew he would be back. The mystery of the stone hand had taken root in his mind. And whether he liked it or not, it would pull him deeper into the darkness of Redwood, into something far older, far stranger, and far more terrifying than anyone had dared to uncover. The dim light of dawn filtered through the towering redwoods, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor of the small cabin Ethan Carter had rented near Crescent City. The faint whimpers of 4 puppies echoed from the corner of the room, where Freya lay curled atop a pile of old blankets, her golden eyes weary yet gentle as she watched over her young. Ethan sat in a tattered armchair, a cup of cold coffee in his hands, his gaze heavy with sorrow but glimmering with a newfound determination. Last night, he had brought Freya and her pups here, turning the rundown cabin into a temporary haven. Yet, despite the warmth of this newfound companionship, his mind was plagued by the image of the colossal stone hand, its eerie carvings, its unnatural warmth. It hadn't been a mere discovery, it had been a summons from the depths of the redwood forest. And Ethan knew he couldn't ignore it. Setting his coffee aside, he knelt beside Freya, gently stroking her soft ears. "You doing okay, girl?" he murmured, his fingers tracing the worn collar inscribed with her name. The puppies, whom he had impulsively named in the middle of the night, began to wobble toward him. Clover, the smallest, with caramel-colored fur, nestled into his hand for warmth. Ash, the boldest, a dark gray pup, nibbled at his fingers. Bruno, the largest, clumsily bumped against his leg, while Vega, the most curious, sniffed around the floor like a tiny explorer. A faint smile tugged at Ethan's lips, his first in months. For a fleeting moment, the emptiness in his chest felt filled with something warm, something alive. But even this joy couldn't silence the question screaming in his mind. What was that stone hand? Who had placed it there? And why did it feel like it was pulling him into a nightmare from which there was no escape? After ensuring Freya had enough food from the vet supply bag, Ethan made a decision. He had to return to the forest. Not wanting to leave Freya and the pups alone for too long, he called Carla, a kind-hearted middle-aged woman from Bert's Pet and Farm Supply in Crescent City, asking if she could watch them. Carla arrived with a broad smile, a bag full of dog toys and a teasing remark. "Looks like you've become a dad overnight, Ethan," she quipped with a wink. Ethan simply nodded, unwilling to explain that he was being drawn into something far bigger than pet care. Packing his camera, sketchbook and a bottle of water, he hopped into his battered SUV and drove back to Redwood National Park, where the stone hand awaited him. The Simpson Reed Trail had become familiar, each step bringing him closer to the mystery gnawing at his soul. The towering redwoods, their gnarled bark resembling the skin of ancient giants, stood silent on either side of the path. Birds chirped, leaves rustled in the wind, but something felt different today. Ethan sensed it, a subtle shift in the air, an invisible gaze trailing his every move. His pace quickened, his heart pounding as he reached the clearing where he had first found Freya. The stone hand was still there, looming amidst the moss and fallen leaves, but in the daylight, it was even more striking. The colossal fingers stretched toward the sky, intricate symbols swirling across the back of the hand, glistening faintly under the sun, as if whispering secrets from a forgotten age. Ethan knelt, brushing away some of the moss. His breath caught in his throat when he uncovered another fragment, a smaller piece of stone, likely the wrist, buried beneath the damp earth. Digging it out with his bare hands, dirt caking under his nails, he turned the fragment over, realizing that the carvings perfectly aligned with those on the hand. "Oh hell," he muttered, his breath uneven. This wasn't just a random chunk of rock. It was part of a massive statue, shattered and scattered throughout the forest. A shiver ran through him, but so did a burning curiosity. He snapped dozens of photos, sketched quick outlines in his notebook, his fingers trembling with excitement. As he touched the newly uncovered piece, that same eerie warmth pulsed beneath his fingertips, like a faint heartbeat echoing from within. "What are you?" he whispered, half expecting an answer. Back at the cabin that afternoon, Ethan couldn't sit still. He spread his photos and sketches across the table, trying to piece together the puzzle. Freya lay beside him, her golden eyes tracking his every move as if sensing his unease. The puppies played at his feet, but his mind was elsewhere, lost in wild theories. Was this the remnant of an ancient civilization? A forgotten piece of art? Or something supernatural? He recalled the ghost stories surrounding Redwood, the shadowy figures glimpsed in the fog, the murmurs carried by the wind. Shaking his head, he told himself he was overthinking. But deep down he knew, he was on a path he couldn't turn back from. The next day he took Freya with him. She was stronger now, walking steadily beside him, nose sniffing the air. They ventured deeper into the forest, beyond the well-trodden paths, where sunlight barely touched the ground. Near a secluded stream, Ethan found another fragment, this time a shoulder piece larger than his backpack. It took all his strength and a length of rope to pry it from the muddy earth. When he placed it beside the stone hand in the clearing, he saw it. They fit together. His pulse pounded. "Freya, do you see this?" he whispered, voice hoarse with excitement. The dog barked once as if in agreement. But not everything was going smoothly. A loud snap echoed through the trees, like the sound of a branch breaking under heavy weight. Ethan whirled around, hand tightening around the folding knife in his pocket, but all he saw was a deer darting through the underbrush. Still, the uneasy sensation of being watched returned, stronger than before. He scanned the forest, but the shadows remained still. Freya's fur bristled, a low growl rumbling in her throat as she stared into the darkness. "You sense something, don't you, girl?" Ethan murmured. But he didn't dare investigate. Not yet. He turned back, strapping the shoulder piece onto his back, his mind racing with doubt and a creeping fear. On the way back, Ethan met Leonard, a weathered, homeless man with deep-set eyes that held an ocean of sorrow. He emerged from the brush near Ethan's SUV, holding an empty water bottle, his voice hoarse as he asked for food. Ethan hesitated, then handed him half a sandwich. When Leonard glimpsed the stone fragment in Ethan's trunk, his brow furrowed. "What did you find out there?" Ethan, caught off guard by the man's curiosity, told him about the stone hand and the scattered pieces. Leonard listened, nodding slowly before speaking in a voice laced with quiet knowing. "I've wandered these woods for years. Sometimes I hear whispers, like the forest is calling someone's name. Maybe what you found is part of it." A chill crept down Ethan's spine. He wasn't sure if he believed Leonard, but he handed him a water bottle and an old blanket. "If you see any more pieces, let me know." That night, in the dim glow of his cabin, Ethan sat surrounded by his photos. Clover slept in his lap, Ash chewed on an old sock, Bruno and Vega chased each other across the floor. But Ethan's mind was elsewhere, fixated on the hand, the fragments, and Leonard's words. He knew he was standing at the edge of something vast, an untold mystery buried beneath the redwood canopy, waiting for him to unearth it. And despite the fear clawing at his gut, despite the unanswered questions, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to stop now. A thick fog blanketed Redwood National Park, turning the towering redwoods into shadowy figures, like giants whispering in the darkness. Ethan Carter stood in the familiar clearing where the giant stone hand had first appeared, now the center of a project beyond his wildest imagination. Before him, the statue, now referred to as the Guardian, was slowly taking shape, each fragment pieced together with sweat, determination, and unseen tears. Its right arm reached toward the sky, the swirling symbols on its stone surface faintly glistening beneath the sunlight piercing through the mist. But one thing was still missing, the face. That absence felt like a wound yet to heal in Ethan's own heart. Lately, the forest was no longer just him and Freya. News of the statue spread like wildfire, drawing curious crowds to Crescent City. Volunteers, archaeology students from a nearby university, and even a local reporter named Shelley Mendez, with her bulky camera and endless questions, began appearing. Ranger Denise Robles, who had once been skeptical of Ethan, now led a small team from the Park Service, overseeing the transportation of stone fragments to ensure no harm came to the ecosystem. "You've awakened all of Redwood, Ethan," Denise said, half joking, half serious, as they watched the colossal stone arm being lifted into place by straps and pulleys. Ethan only nodded, unsure whether to feel proud or anxious that his secret now belonged to the world. Freya, the loyal mother dog, remained by his side on his forest treks. She lay in the shade, her golden eyes watchful of the bustling crowd, while her pups, Clover, Ash, Bruno and Vega, now bigger and more mischievous, were kept at the cabin under Carla's care. They were no longer the fragile creatures Ethan had rescued from the woods. They were symbols of life, of hope, just like the statue taking shape before him. But each night, when Ethan returned to the cabin, he was haunted by a question. Where was the Guardian's face? He had searched every trail, dug beneath dense undergrowth, and even followed the rushing waters of the Smith River, but there was no trace. He began to wonder if the final piece even existed or if time in the deep woods had swallowed it whole. One late afternoon, as the sunset painted the horizon in hues of crimson, Leonard, the homeless man with deep-set eyes, appeared in the clearing. He walked slowly, clutching a worn plastic bag, his weathered face lit by a rare glimmer of hope. "Found this near the river," he said in a raspy voice, pulling out a small stone fragment, no larger than a fist, yet etched with the familiar swirling patterns. Ethan took it, his heart pounding. It was part of the wrist, not the face, but it was proof that more pieces were out there waiting to be found. "Thank you, Leonard," Ethan murmured, his voice catching. Leonard nodded, then unexpectedly sat beneath a tree, pulling out an old guitar with mismatched strings. "Think I'll play a tune for the big guy," he muttered, strumming clumsy yet soulful chords. The music wove through the clearing, blending with the rustling leaves, creating a hauntingly beautiful melody. Volunteers paused their work, standing still to listen, and Ethan felt his eyes sting. He thought of his mother, who had always believed the world held wonders for those willing to seek them. Now, in the heart of the forest, he was living that wonder, not just in the statue but in the people like Leonard, Denise, and Freya who had become part of his life. Yet he knew the journey wasn't over. The guardian needed its face, and Ethan wouldn't stop until he found it. That night he dreamed a strange dream. He saw himself following a faint glow through the redwood forest, the swirling symbols on tree trunks guiding him like stars. At the end of the path lay a massive stone face, half buried in the earth, its eyes sealed shut as if in slumber. Thunder rumbled, and suddenly the eyes snapped open, radiating an ancient, deep light that seemed to hold the history of the forest itself. Ethan jolted awake, drenched in sweat, his heartbeat erratic. Outside his window the wind howled through the treetops, whispering, "Keep going." He sat up, wiping away tears he hadn't realized had fallen, and felt an unshakable resolve ignite within him. The next day, guided by his dream, Ethan led Freya to a remote area near the Smith River, a place rarely visited. He dug through damp earth, his hands scratched by rocks and tangled roots, until his fingers met something cold and solid. He pulled hard, and before him emerged the final piece, the face of the guardian. Deep-set eyes, a strong nose, and an air of silent majesty sent chills down his spine. He let out a triumphant shout. Freya barked beside him, and for the first time, he felt the redwood forest stir as if breathing with him. The final assembly took place on a sunlit afternoon. When the face was set in place, the completed statue stood over 10 meters tall, its stone eyes seeming to gaze through everyone present. The swirling symbols glowed in the evening light, and a sacred stillness settled over the clearing. Elder Marianne, an elder of the Yurok tribe, stepped forward, murmuring a prayer in an ancient tongue. Leonard placed his hand on the statue's foot, silent tears rolling down his face. Freya stood still, tail swishing gently, sensing the significance of the moment. Ethan knelt beside her, stroking her ears, realizing that this journey wasn't just about restoring the guardian, it was about restoring himself. From the pain of loss, he had found hope, faith, and a new family in Freya, the pups, and the people like Leonard who had become part of his world. As the rune-like symbols faded back into stone, the crowd erupted in applause, unshed tears glistening in many eyes. The guardian wasn't a perfect statue, but a testament to resilience, a story stitched together from fragments, much like Ethan and those around him. He looked at Leonard, who now smiled faintly, and understood that Redwood had healed not just him but many others. Someone once told him, "Nothing in life happens by chance, everything has its reason." And now Ethan believed it. He stood there beside Freya and her now strong pups, Clover, Ash, Bruno, and Vega, and felt a deep truth settle within him. Life is a journey of piecing together the fragments, and sometimes, those very fragments create the most extraordinary wonders. Life is like the guardian statue. Sometimes we feel broken, lost, but if we persevere and believe, every little piece will eventually come together, forming a stronger, more beautiful version of ourselves. Don't give up, because every step is part of a greater journey. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales. Together, we will continue searching for the missing pieces that make life whole.